Moist. No, I'm not wearing a suit for this. The whole thing, because I'm a little fat for the suit. Like, I was a little bit fat for the jacket. Just a teensy bit. It's a little tight. It's a little tight in the midsection. So anyway, been a little bit since I've done a deck tech. Like, the old format, the old logo since I've done a deck tech. But hilariously, the deck is kind of the same. The last time I did a deck tech was the Legolas build with Azalea, which used a lot of kind of generics and then kind of followed up with an arrow. And everything else were kind of decoys. And this deck kind of works the same way, but with a lot more neat little tricks to it. So I fell in love with Riptide at the release events. First off, I love Outsiders. Oh my god, what a good set. But I fell in love with Riptide doing the releases just because of the versatility and the fact that even when he didn't have much to do, he was still a threat. And I really liked that, and I liked his interaction with the arsenal, and I was like, all right, I wonder if there's some neat, interesting things that we can do with this. I think I've done pretty well with it. I've got a Talishar build that has just been spicy. It's not like overwhelming, especially like it's got like a 48% written rate, but that also includes like a lot of time of testing stuff that just wasn't working. But I'd say maybe about 60%, 60 to 70% nowadays. And against things that like I should not be winning against, Uzuri, Dorinthia, like basically if you're doing physical damage, we're going to have ourselves a little bit of a tumble. Kano's getting a little bit better. And Dromai is always Dromai, but I'm getting a little better there too. But anyway, we'll talk about that kind of stuff. That's for later, though. Starting off, beer of the day. We're doing a beer of the day. Oops, I should do the actual one. All that time trying to get, like, finesse it. Mango Pirate. There we go. Mango Pirate. It's golden sour from New Belgium. Yeah. So, and I learned my lesson. I do not have the fingernails to open these cans, so I got to use an X-Acto knife because I'm terrible. But anyway. So I figure I'll show off kind of how the deck works, how the deck tries to win, and what it's really trying to do. And then I'm going to show off kind of just the different effects of the card, because this is a little bit tricky in that this deck plays a lot of mind games. The idea, kind of like the word moist, is that you're constantly uncomfortable, which is just kind of how moist works. Anyway, we'll put that over there. But cheers, everyone. So I'm going to show off the deck. I don't know if I'm going to try a 10-minute timer. We're going to see how that goes. But I'll show off the deck, and we'll go from there. Oh my god, that's good. We'll go from there. Boom. I'll put that over here. All of that putting stuff together, but like now I'm doing talking head side, so like I gotta disrupt that whole thing. So let's do this. We're gonna go 10-minute timer with my fancy timer. I got a new timer. All right, so 10 o'clock. Off we go. So the Moist Boy Riptide deck tries to do basically kind of one thing, which is a lot of chip shot damage and getting in basically sneaky little things where you've got to make the decision as the opponent whether or not this damage is important to you, or whether or not you're okay with whatever the effects afterwards are. And when I actually switch the camera, that's going to make a heck of a lot more sense. But I'll kind of quickly dive through like the entire list, and then I'll switch it over and I'll kind of show you how the deck is really split out. So equipment and weapons are just kind of a one-hit wonder. This is a red liner Riptide because there's not a lot of resources, and I really didn't want to have to waste kind of effort and energy. Like, I need to save a card for pitch, and I need to save cards for defense and cards for attack. I didn't want to cover all three of those things. So there are some cards that need resources, but thankfully I can leverage the trench for some of those if I need them. And in a pinch, yeah, okay, fine, I'll pitch. But really, it's red liner Riptide. There's not a ton of arrows in this deck. You'll see that as well. That's also kind of why we're leveraging Bracers of Belief as opposed to Bullseye Bracers or something else. So Bracers of Belief is in that just like something gets extra power. And again, this is one of those like, do you care about this damage, or do you really want to put the extra effort to come in? I like Bracers. I like Bracers kind of making that choice a little bit harder for the opponent. Skullbone Cross Wrap is really useful. Just being able to opt and being able to cycle things, tunnel stuff down. It's also great for the extra AB. There's 2 AB in this deck. Naturally. That's really kind of just been fine. Snapdragon Scalers has been good. I tried it. I've been thinking about an iteration that uses Tome of Findel and Mage Master boots, but I'm not digging it again because resources are kind of scarce already. Trench of Second Treasure. My god, this card in Riptide is phenomenal. Being able to not get trapped in your arsenal, and being able to just kind of, you know, get an extra resource as you need to, or it's great for those CNC turns, where, like, you know, they CNC, I'm like, man, I really don't want to put in, I can clap back, but I don't lose the arsenal. Awesome. I'll just trench that thing under, so that way I can save that. Resource kind of fizzles, that's okay, but at least I get to keep the card. Huzzah. Vambrace of Determination is something that's fairly new I'm trying, actually, which has been fun for, oh gosh, it's been fun. It's definitely been fun against Oldhim, and it's been fun against the Dromize that leverage the spectral shields of, hey, I'm going to put it, you know, put in this little effort of, you know, doing defense, you know, doing prevention. Things like also Oasis Respite are great. That Vambrace has come in clutch a number of times. So I like these in like the Oldhim, Dromize, and even kind of the Kano, or anything where I'm really expecting a lot of the defense to come from like Oasis Respite. Deck itself, I'm not going to worry too much about the, you know, seeing it here. I'd rather show it over here, but it's 73 cards out of the gate, and in a lot of cases, it's hovers in like just using all 73 or hanging in like the 65 territory. There's very few cases like in Kano where I whittle it down to 60, which is basically remove as many traps as humanly possible, and just try to race it out. But that's kind of the equipment suite to begin with. Yeah, we'll go through the rest of the stuff in actual physical form. So I'll switch the camera and see you guys in just a sec. Okay, so first things first, I want to talk quickly about this. Oh, I should start that timer. Restart. Okay. First things first, I want to talk about this mat because it's actually really special to me. This is Flesh and Blood Army of Utah. I'm not in Utah. I'm in Colorado, basically right next door. However, over the weekend, actually on Sunday morning, we gave birth to our daughter Elizabeth Azalea. Elizabeth Azalea sent art. So our first daughter, I was thrilled with it, and I was kind of looking through for mats for this video, and then I spotted this one because this was actually given to me by our friend Brooks, who was one of the first creators that I kind of watched that I really leveraged as far as like living the dream, because he used to have, and I don't think he still has it, but he used to have dad and daughter TCG. So I was like, man, that's, you know, because now I've got kind of like dad and daughter mode, and I'd love to play TCGs with her someday. So this was kind of like the perfect mat for this kind of moment of, hey, maybe someday I can take the mantle, also of doing dad and daughter TCG. So that's the story of the mat. Anyway, so that's Riptide and the suite, but I want to go over what the starting cards are. Usually this is going to be your suite, by the way. Like Vambrace is really the only thing that is just kind of depending on the matchup, and then everything else is pretty much the same. I'm not really trying to you know, go crazy as far as what's in front of me, and so far that's been doing okay. So anyway, like I said, this deck is very much focused on basically making the opponent make some pretty hard decisions as far as what damage matters and what doesn't. So I'm going to split this up for starters. We'll handle this half of the deck later. This is everything that's not attacks. These are the attacks. There's not a ton of them, but oh, they do some work. I also have to appreciate that in many cases, most cases in fact, the traps are also going to be able to do damage in. So I don't mind having kind of like 35 or so attacks in this, but I'm split these up into two categories. The first category is the chip shot damage. This is the stuff that is kind of annoying to have come through, but outside of that, it's just damage that's coming through. So 3 E-strikes to start. It's also, I like having the E-strikes, especially just because since this is trap heavy, there might be instances where I'm throwing a bunch of traps down and I only have 1 card left. It's nice to have it be the E-strike. So E-strike, easy damage in, same with Ravenous Rabbles, easy damage in, Scar for Scar, easy damage in. It's especially nice that, you know, since Riptide starts at 38, so you get these immediately, which is cool. I only have 2 of these. Part of that is because I didn't want to, like, there were enough instances where I was over in life that these weren't really functional, and also at the time I could only find 2, so whatever. I'm still playing with this deck. Falcon Wings, 5 Falcon Wings. Any Rangers getting go again. Rangers getting go again is real good, you guys. There's a reason there's not many ways that you can do that. Rangers getting go again is awesome. So all the Falcon Wings, and again, it's just chip shot damage. It's in that realm of like the opponent is probably just gonna like let this through. Most likely, so you're just going to whittle down. This is not your Azalea 14, 17 pumped dominated arrow that's going to hit in 1. You're chipping down your opponent a lot. There's no way I'm going to hit this timer. Oops. Where's my, especially if I accidentally throw down cards that shouldn't be. Where are you? Ah, you're there. Searing shots, also kind of chip shot damage. This is in a little bit of a mid that people like to block these out because they really just don't like that extra 1 loss. Also mind the German version. Again, I couldn't find the rest of them, so I have a box of German. But searing shot, also kind of in that chip shot damage. So this is just the whittle damage down a little bit. Maybe the opponent doesn't care too much. It's the rest of them that this deck gets really tricky, really spicy, really fast. So I'm going to set that over there. This is my meh damage. So let's go over the rest of them. Virulent touches. In that realm of, this is probably chip shot damage because customers, opponents. Wow, I've been doing some interviews. Opponents don't really don't like blocking this card from hand. They don't like the blood rot, even though even blocking for some reason, like the mindset still hasn't been, if I block for 3 and take 1 damage for this, it's not worth the 2 from blood rot, even though you win by 1 life in that. Whatever. But virulence are really good little cards to drop in. And usually you're going to get that damage through. So again, you're chipping away. And if this does get defended, well, that's 2 damage that might chip away. Chip, 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 chip. So that's like the make decisions damage. Remorseless is always make your decisions damage. Just constantly. Just a straight up good arrow. Especially in those like go wide type of turns. You know, your phis are also going to be taking damage. So chip, 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 chip away. Chip away. Overload. This one's funny. This one's really funny. Again, another in that like chip away damage, or you're going to be peeling cards out of the hand. The other side of this equation is by, letting this chip damage come through really, really fast. This deck goes very, very wide. If the opponent wants to, let that go, chances are you're going to out-tempo them a little bit. But stuff like Overload is that little kind of goad, like, I want to get a card out of your hand. Like, I bet I can get a card out of your hand. So we're going to try that. We're going to see how it goes. The other nice part about Overload in this is because of Riptide's effect, I've got 2 Premeditates and 2 Scan of Peripheries in here. This becomes a 6 played from Arsenal, and I don't have to sit there and wait for it to get in the Arsenal because Riptide's effects let me do that automatically. So it's really easy between those, the nimbleisms and everything else. It's really easy for me to turn these into at least 6 Dominates. And again, that's just chip damage. That's free damage coming in. I'm stopping this timer. There's no way I'm hitting the timer, but I'm going to try to get close. So the overloads, I really like these in. They're also kind of great at the end of like surprise. I want to take a card out of your hand, or hey, I get go again. Go agains are great. So make your choices card. Endless Arrow is also always a make your choices card. It's good chip damage and it comes back, but this is another one that's often blocked out quite a bit. But it also gets it's going to slow them down a little bit. I like taking cards from the opponent's hand for this because I'm going super crazy holy crap wide. So there's a lot of things that they need to block. Eventually that's going to just screw over some of their turns, or I'm going to get some free damage in. Gotta love good old Endless. This is also like great for your Drum Eyes. Speaking of great for the Drum Eyes, good old Death Touch. Another one of those like make your choices. Do I really want to let this damage go in, especially with how easy this is to turn into a 9 attack from the arsenal for 1? Woo. Block from, deal with 9, and then whatever the effect is. Usually this is another one of those where I see a lot of people like burning cards from the hand, slowing their own turns down to ensure this thing doesn't go through. And at that point, I kind of win on tempo. If I'm playing 1 card for them to block with 2, I'm going to win that in the long run. Granted, Riptide doesn't have much of a long run, but if anything, maybe it's an opportunity to get tempo back. Loving the Death Touches. Also, 6s for Drum Eye. Neat. Promise of Plenty. What stupid spice is Promise of Plenty in this? So, hey, I get this thing in hand. I can throw it in the arsenal. It gets go again no matter what. It gets go again no matter what. Being able to mirror that along with like Skullbone Cross Wrap, so I can kind of guarantee, like, hey, I can guarantee that the card that I want is going to be, an attack or not guarantee, but at least I can have a better shot of knowing that. Or with the Trench, if the card that is in there I just don't like, well, I can just trench it away and I have a free resource for something else. So that, and again, because of Riptide's effects, being able to play something which will usually be like a pump or something, and to get that into the arsenal, this is another one of those like make your choices. Do you want to let 3 damage go in and give me cards, or 6 damage go in, or however much this swings for? Do you want to give me that free arsenal card? Or do you want to strip some cards from your hand, block this thing, but chances are I'm going to have go again, so you're going to have to deal with whatever's next. God, I love Promise of Plenty in this Riptide deck. It's such spicy little stupid tech, and it's gotten me out of some jams. It's pretty fun. It's real fun. The last ones, these are probably going to be like a little bit goofy. So there is one single Command and Conquer in the deck, and you're probably like, why? Well, it's 2. It's 2 cost, and that's just not fun. I find myself not really needing to use this too much. Yeah, it's nice. It's another one of those like make your decisions type of things, but man, holding on to 2 resources can really be a pain in the butt. Because it's Ranger, there's just not a lot of yellows and not a lot of blues. But it is neat in a pinch. It's a good 3 block, and it's a popper if I need it. Last but not least, Freewheeling Renegades. This is another one of those fun, like, make your choices kind of cards. So it's going to come in for 6. I love this card against Fi, by the way. This is one of my favorites against Fi. Because Fi loves to just not block. That's just not a thing. So fine, but this, this adds 2 extra power if you choose to not do that. So this is another one I was like, I want to get a card out of your hand kind of attacks, but also the fact that it's 1 gives me things like Nimblism, and it gives me things like Razor Reflex, to really stack on this thing. So this becomes a real problem card. Yeah, the -2 kind of sucks with an action, but chances are it's going to get a little bit of damage in. And again, this deck is all about chipping away. And it's going to steal cards out of the hand. That's real important. So that's your attack suite. Chip shot damage, make your choices damage. Stuff that is likely going to maybe take cards out of the opponent's hand or make them really think about letting that damage through. And in the end, it creates kind of an annoying effect either way. I like that. So chips away. Moving into the pump style, there's 9. Premeditates, Nimblisms, and Scout the Periphery. Just, stuff in the arsenal. Nimblism is just straight up good. Most of these things are 1. Command and Conquer is the only one that isn't 1. And especially with things like the Death Touch and Freewheeling Renegades, those are 9 attacks coming in at the start. Ooh, that does some work. Scout the Periphery is also really nice, especially because sometimes it's nice to see what the opponent has coming. That can answer quite a few questions. Chances are, if I'm playing this and putting something in arsenal, so I can look at their deck and I'll just use the Skullbone to opt my own deck. So it's a good way to get a lot of information. Big fan of these. I've thought about Minnowisms. There's just not enough 3 attacks in the deck for it to really make that work. But yeah, 9 pumps to get in, and of course, if I really want to get over that hump. If I really, I like this in the end game of like make your choices with the bracers. Bracers can be one of those like, do you really want to give me that? That Promise of Plenty card? I love it with with Virulent Touch, because chances are this becomes a 6 now that is going to block. If the opponent blocks, they're going to get a Blood Rot. Oof, that's no fun. Continue to love bracers, I believe. But yeah, that's those. Those are your pumps. That's essentially what we got there. Little bit of life gain and protection. There's 3 Sigils of Solaces. This is purely to get Riptide's effect off the ground. Being able to just have an instance and shove something. I've played a card from hand, shove something in the arsenal. Plus the 3 health is always nice. Neat little spoiler against Kano. But the bigger spoiler against Kano is a Feign Death. I know there's one single Feign Death. It's tacky, but every Kano deck basically plays the same way, which is just build up into that one Blazing Aether. And given how fast I'm going through cards and being able to cycle with Trench and a whole bunch of other stuff, chances are I'm going to find this before that thing pops off. And that's going to put me in a really good spot to just be like, hey, I'm going to let you do your stuff. And surprise, I've got a Feign Death. Neat. This basically is in no deck other than the Kano deck. It sideboards out every other time. But whatever. Fun, silly life things, but being able to use these to activate Riptide can also be really super useful, especially on those like pummel turns, on those things where I've got to like discard. I'll just put in the arsenal instead. What else do we have? We'll do the little bit of annoyance. I'm gonna have to take kind of a little bit of a break, sadly, on this one as well. So this is gonna cut here in a couple of minutes. Actually, I'll do this part and I have to cut. So anyway. Codex of Bloodrot, Codex of Frailty, and then Razor Reflexes. I'll do the Razors first just because they're good. This serves kind of a couple of funny little purposes. One, it's always great to get that damage in, and giving things like the Virulence or the Death Touches or even the Remorseless, one, they get the hit, and two, they get go again. But two, even better, is that you play this and it's a card from your hand. So you get to use Riptide's effect in response, and if that is like another Death Touch or Virulent, then cool. This get, whatever I attacked with gets go again if it didn't have it, and I've got the thing in the arsenal to be able to to swing for something that maybe couldn't have. This has been kind of a spicy little batch of annoying. And again, in the realm of chip away, these do a lot of work over time. Last things are the Codexes of Bloodrot and Codex of Frailty. The Frailties are a little bit new, but I like being able to get back, some of these rather annoying cards. The Bloodrot I've used actually a lot more because I like getting cards out of hand. That's the thing with Riptide. That's the thing with kind of how this deck works. I want your choices to be difficult as the opponent, and then whatever they are, I want you to have some sort of regret afterwards in some way. So Bloodrots are really good. You don't have an arsenal. Get something in the arsenal. That's one card out of your hand that you don't get to block with. The end. Same with Frailty. I don't entirely like Frailty too much, just because I don't really have a lot of like arsenal hate, like what you're used to seeing with the CNCs or like Leave No Witnesses in Assassin. So I'm not like too thrilled with this. It's a fairly new addition. But in those moments where they do have an arsenal, because it's very possible they will, I like being able to play this to get back one of those cards that they really, again, have to make those hard choices to block with. Your Death Touches, your Virulent, stuff like that. I like that. I at least like that option if I need it. So recapping where we're at before we get to this pile of fun. So the deck is very much focused on basically making the opponent have to make some difficult choices and chipping in. This is not trying to just win like with 4 big arrows or something like that. So I've got my chip shot damage, which is just kind of the vanilla, nothing too special about them, but it's definitely annoying damage. And then the make your decisions, where blocking or not blocking is going to have some sort of adverse effect. So I'm trying to basically peel cards out of the opponent's hand to slow them down while this damage does its work, as well as this damage does its work. The Scouts, Premeditates, Nimblisms, there's basically 9 plus 3 pumps, 6 of them to get things into the arsenal, or 6 things that benefit from arsenal. It's not like a requirement thing, it's just more really nice to haves. It's just nice to be able to have 0 cost plus 3 with basically no restrictions, at least, or in the case of Riptide, very, very easy restrictions. So that's what those are in there for. Sigil of Solaces and Feign Death. Feign Death is purely for Kano. Sigil of Solaces are in there for basically getting a free kind of Riptide trigger, and of course the life gain's nice. Razor Reflexes are to be annoying and get the Riptide trigger. Codex of Frailty are things that if the opponent doesn't have an arsenal, or I'm a little bit worrisome about putting this in, but in the meantime, if they do and I don't, it's nice for me to be able to get something into the arsenal as well. It's also especially nice for things like the Trench, where if I've got a Codex in hand, maybe I have something that I don't quite want to play, or maybe it doesn't have go again. Being able to just trench it under and I have one resource basically free for Codex of Frailty, that gives me something like a Death Touch, and I'm not paying for the resource. It's already covered courtesy of Trench. So that's pretty huge. So Frailty, yeah, I like it if the opponent has an arsenal and I don't. Codex of Bloodrot, I don't really care either way. If the opponent doesn't have an arsenal, it's just better for me because they get a Bloodrot and then they have to drop a defense card from their hands. So I'm a bigger fan of this than anything else. And there's no discard for me, so I still get to kind of go as fast as I want, and they still lose a card in the process. And they don't gain a card, which is also kind of nice. So that's where we're at with this side of the equation. So let's talk about the traps. The trap suite. A little bit of a blend. We'll start with kind of the basic ones, which are the auto triggers. These tend to be a little bit risky, but they've won me a lot more games than you would think, especially the pitfall traps. My God, these things have done so much work. Tripwire has been nice. It's a 0 for 4. If I remove any of them, these are probably the closest. But sometimes that, the effects don't trigger is really, really useful. And it's also another one of those really nice, like, this is the last card that you have. Maybe it's their last attack. They've only got one card in hand. Do they want that hit? Do they want that hit effect? Or do they want to pitch the last card in their hand and not get an arsenal? It's another one is like, make your decisions. But no matter what, this is a damage, this is a damage, these are damage. This is 5 damage from Riptide's effect for anybody who's actually attacking. That's nice. Already happy with that. These can inking a little bit more. So that's what those are for. So yeah. Those are your basics. As far as the other suite, naturally I've got all 3 of the legendaries. The only one that's kind of on the iffy pile ever is like the spike pits, just because having you don't see too many ones that have reactions. I'm still kind of maybe on the Lexi with this one, just because you usually see like you'll usually see like snapdragons. Like if I feel like there's going to be a snapdragons, I'm probably going to sneak the spike trap in. And if anything, it is still 3 defense. The pitch is nice. Granted, I never really need it, but in AB land, whatever. This is the only one I'm kind of iffy on, but man, these do some serious work. So here's your go again traps. Here's your greater than traps. I tend to not really split unless I really know there's like no chance in hell that you're going to see like the plus damage. Like this whole suite kind of goes away with Dromai. There's no reason to really do like the plus damage traps with Dromai. That's just not a thing that she does. But the go again traps I find to be fairly useful. I've also kind of learned that I like the yellow traps a little bit more than I like the red traps in a lot of these cases. So frailty is usually great. Frailty is definitely annoying versus those that have weapons and of course your arsenal hate, whatnot. But the tar pit trap and being able to knock out an effects don't trigger, my god, like versus Phi, just having this in hand and letting that third, having that third attack come through for like a mask. A mask of momentum and just playing this on top of it, and that doesn't trigger, like cute, funny. I tend to like these a little bit more. Also, again, just having the pitch in can be nice. It can be useful. And then collapsing trap is just mean. It's just really mean. On the flip side with it, again, buzzsaw trap, it's not as mean, but I've definitely pissed a couple people off with this card, especially ones that go really heavy on the pummel. Real funny. This is also really useful to hold against like a Lexi or an Azalea where they're playing Bolton shots. It's really useful in Lexi where they're really putting a lot of emphasis on the Bolton shots. Being able to hold this for one of their turns where they're going real big, like like they're 3 of a kind and they drop that Bolton shot, they're going to give it +1 so it gets go again. Naturally, this will knock that down, which kills the go again. It's either they're popping their Snapdragon scalers, or if they don't have them, well, that ends their turn. Har 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 har. Sorry guys. So yeah, fan of that. Inertia traps, always useful, always fun. You can switch and maybe go 3 and 2 with this, just because you don't find too many instances where you're going to need to put 3 -1 counters on something, but these do a heck of a lot of work on their own. But also, I also kind of have them in just sometimes the pitch is really, sometimes the pitch is nice. This is one that you can probably swap 3 and 2. It's probably one I'm still like playing with in my subconscious as well. Editing Joe, because I totally forgot about one of my favorite tricks, which is specifically against Assassin with the pump traps, Inertia, Boulder, and Buzzsaw. I wouldn't waste a Buzzsaw on this one, but because the daggers for Assassin all have piercing, one of the things I like to do is if they throw off with the arrow, and you have one of these guys in hand, block with a 0-cost armor. The piercing is going to trigger, which is going to pump that dagger up to 2, which makes it greater than its base, which is going to trigger the effects of these things. It's basically just free damage, and it's really cheeky to do, and it really makes him kind of regret swinging with that dagger. Anyway, just fun, stupid tricks. Take that, Assassin. But yeah, so those are that's basically your trap suite. At the end of the day, you're not going to be able to pull all of them off, of course, but it does represent a lot of damage. These alone represent 5 damage. Notoriously in games, I'm able to get about 6 or 7 of these off, and that represents about 12. It's between 10 and 15 damage is pretty common from traps alone in this, which is super, super useful. So you take that and you connect that with, with everything else of I'm going to slow you down, or I'm going to get a little bit of chip shot damage. And yeah, this is going to be just a slow whittle away at the opponent until suddenly their own attacks become a liability because you've still got traps that are capable of doing damage, and now they're down to like 4 health, 3 health, 2 health, 1 health. So that's the Riptide Spicy Silly deck. I'm going to flip the camera one more time, share final thoughts and things that I'm still working on, and then we're going to call this one. All right, so wrapping it up, so a couple common matchups, some matchup ideas that I kind of throw in. Things against Dromai, like I said, I basically will just knock out really a lot of the traps except for like the go again traps and try to get myself down probably to about 65 and just try to get damage in as quick as humanly possible. I found a neat blend of, thankfully with this deck being able to go wide, going as wide as it can, you are able to knock out a lot of dragons pretty quickly, which is really nice. Also being able to use those Promise of Plenties to just chip off dragons and then you get the card effects, assuming that they don't. That's also kind of a really nice little benefit to it. Which is pretty neat. I also tend to knock out like the Feign Deaths in that one. I don't really care as much. Feign Death basically gets knocked out of just about everything that isn't Kano. So down we go. The other one I'll usually sneak out is going to be the Bracers. I'm still kind of between like putting in Bracers and Belief and not on that one, just because of things like Sand Cover, Oasis, Respite. There tends to be a lot of prevention in a Dromai deck, or there's enough prevention in a Dromai deck that those Van Braces is kind of a really nice spicy piece of like, oh crap, this does get in, oh shoot, this does hit. And sometimes that's the difference between killing a dragon and not in a few cases. So that's kind of how I play that one out. Knock out the attack bumps, traps, stick with the go-agains, because those can be really useful. Knock out some dragons as you can, but just try to get as much damage in. Just kind of go. Kano is knock out as many traps, just knock out all the traps and keep whatever's left that is that has yellow pitch or higher. Get yourself to 60 and just go. Just launch at them as fast as you possibly can. Burn everything you can, primarily so you can try to get to that Feign Death as quick as you can. Crossing your fingers that you can get it, but in both cases, it's a little bit of a gamble. You're both kind of racing to get the setup. My setup is a Feign Death, but when you're burning 4 or 5 cards at a time, you'll find that one pretty quick. Especially also with just as much damage as you're able to do. Yeah, it's going okay. The Kano matchup's getting quite a bit better. Oldhim, honestly, I keep just about everything with Oldhim, with the exception of I'm going to swap out the Bracers of Belief for the Van Braces, just because Crown of Seeds and having that one extra, having that one extra prevention that they rely on pretty heavily just not mean anything. That's actually pretty huge. That's really huge in an Oldhim. So everything else pretty much stays. Like I don't even mind the defense reacts, partly because of any instances of things like Dominate, being able to have an arsenal, right? You have an arsenal, maybe it's full and you don't need the card. I can trench that, so that way it opens up the arsenal slot. I can play a trap, put a trap in the arsenal, and then play that trap, and that gets around things like Dominate. That kind of screws over like the Terra Sunder game pretty hard, the Terra Sunder Titan Fist. So I like to keep just about everything, honestly, with the Oldhim, except for swapping out the Bracers. My standard for this is Bracers of Belief to begin with. That's just always what it is right now, unless I'm really feeling the prevention. I'll tend to take out the freewheeling Renegades unless I really feel confident that they don't want to block. Like if the opponent does not want to block, I'm going to put in those freewheeling Renegades just to be like, no, you're gonna give me something whether you like it or not. So like those really heavy aggro decks, I tend to like freewheeling Renegades. I also really like it in like your Dorinthia. I love it in Dorinthia because she doesn't really have a lot of actions that she's blocking with. So that's probably going to stay at 6, or unless there's a pretty hefty sacrifice in the process. I'll also knock out the Feign Death once again, and then the Spike Trap tends to be pretty iffy. The Spike Pit Trap, it's a little bit back and forth as far as how I feel about that one. So, but that's been the deck, honestly. They tend to be, you're not going to get like a 5-minute game out of it or anything like that, but there's always something to do. It is incredibly fun to play. It's really fun to kind of, I've had a lot of people say it's really fun to play against too, just because it keeps them on their toes quite a bit. It's usually a good back and forth battle. In a lot of cases, it comes down to the wire, like, do I have the trap or don't I? And it's also, there's a lot of versatility, and a lot of like, I could throw this trap at you, or I can hold on to it, use it for pitch. Like, how much do I care about this damage? It's been a heck of a lot of fun. But that is the uncomfortable, the moistest of boys, Riptide. I was trying to find the token. Where are you? There he is. Lurker of the deep, or in this case, lurker of the wide. That's actually kind of cruel, right? I can go like rip wide, or maybe I can go chip tide. There's a lot of different ways you can call this, but because I'm terrible, I went with Moist Boy. You can find it on fabrary.net is what I have it as right now. And then, yeah, that's what I got for Deck Tech. Let me know what you think, if you've tried it out, if you played against it, if you've got kind of your own thoughts and ideas. And I'd love to see what kind of Riptide builds you guys are looking at, just because he's a little bit tricky. He hasn't quite been cracked yet. But I really like this approach. I think it leverages his effect and really makes the arsenal a really key aspect of it to it, but also makes everything the opponent does kind of a liability to themselves. And that's kind of the reason I really like Riptide, is you don't get to just coast through this deck. And that's really kind of how I want to play. But with that being said, didn't quite finish because I was busy, but that's my Deck Tech. Thank you guys so much for joining. Cheers, everybody. See you in Talishar if I don't see you in person.